Hey guys, Emmanuel Bren here and welcome to Practical Knowledge. Today I will talk about the book The 5 Elements of Effective Thinking by Edward Berger and Michael Starbuck. The authors are teachers, so they have a lot of experience in teaching and stimulating young minds to see further than just the basic knowledge that they are used to learn in class. So in this book, they show how to develop new habits that will lead to producing new knowledge and insight in our academic life, career, and even in business. A wondrously romantic belief we may have is that brilliant people, like students, thinkers, innovators, are born brilliant, right? They have the right aptitude and then they spontaneously produce brilliant ideas. Like a student who always aces the exam, like Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, and so on. But in fact, those people created their own victories by practicing habits of thinking that inevitably carry them step by step to works of greatness. No leaps were involved, but a few basic strategies of thought led them to effective understanding, learning, and innovation. As the book states, extraordinary people are just ordinary people who are thinking differently, and that could be you. So the authors outlined a method in 5 habits to build this approach in a more concrete and practical way. They are: understand deeply, make mistakes, raise questions, follow the flow of ideas, and change. To help to trigger our memory and enable us to apply these techniques, they associated each one of the strategies with a classical element. So we have earth, fire, air, water, and the quintessential element which will bind everything. Okay, maybe you're familiar with the symbols. They are from that animation Avatar: The Last Airbender. And when I was reading the book, I thought maybe I could bring some example of that animation. So we have one reference along this video, so stay tuned. So let's talk about the first element, earth, understand deeply. First of all, understand deeply raises some questions. Do we really know something, or do we just think we do? One of the examples brought by the book is Tony Plug, an internationally acclaimed trumpet virtuoso, composer, and teacher. During a master class with a group of talented soloists, he asked them to play a portion of his or her selected virtuosic piece. They played wonderfully. As expected, he gave some advice to the students about how the piece could be played more beautifully, with more technique, and etc. After that, the surprise came. He asked the students to play a very easy warm-up exercise that any beginning trumpet player might be given. They played a handful of simple notes which sounded childish compared to the dramatically fast high notes from the earlier, more sophisticated pieces. And then Tony, for the first time during the lesson, picked up the trumpet. He played the same phrase, but when he played it, it was not childish, it was exquisite. Each note was rich, delightful sound. He gave a small phrase a delicate shape, revealing a flowing sense of dynamics that enable us to hear meaning in those simple notes. The lesson was simple. The master teacher suggested that the advanced students focus more on their time on practicing simple pieces intensively, learning to perform them with technical efficiency and beautiful elegance. Deep work on simple, basic ideas help to build true virtuosity, not just in music, but in everything. So the first step to understand things deeply is understanding the basics of any subject more clearly. For example, one secret to mastering calculus is to truly master basic algebra first. One secret to making an extraordinary cake is to understand the role of each of the ingredients, how they combine with each other, and how they will be affected by the oven. If you want to learn more about how to better invest your money, you need to learn the basics of economy, interests, taxes, how the bonds, equities, and the stock market works, and so on. So don't forget that the most fundamental ideas in any subject can be understood with ever-increasing depth. And as I promised, here is a pop culture example. If you have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series, you may remember that when Toph was trying to bend metal, she used her seismic sense to perceive, target, and utilize the trace amounts of earth presented in refined metal in order to bend the metal itself, right? This seismic sense was the base of earth bending that Toph learned with the Badger Moles. Understand deeply this basic technique allows her to do something even greater.
Come on, metal, fudge! Woo! Toph, you rule.
So, to learn any subject well and to create ideas beyond those that have existed before, we can return to the basics repeatedly. And of course, when you look back after learning a complicated subject, the basics seem far simpler. However, those simple basics are a moving target. As you learn more, the fundamentals become at once simpler but also subtler, deeper, more nuanced, and more meaningful. Tony Plog, the trumpet virtuoso, found limitless beauty in a simple exercise and in turn found deep insights into the more interesting difficult pieces. Another point is to break a difficult task into simpler ones. In 1961, a speech was delivered to Congress on May 25. John F. Kennedy challenged the country with the words,
"I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth."
On May 26, the National Space Council didn't suit up an astronaut. Instead, their first goal was to hit the moon, literally speaking. And just over 3 years later, NASA successfully smashed Ranger 7 into the moon, an unmanned spacecraft that transmitted over 4,000 photographs of the lunar surface. It took 15 ever-evolving iterations before the gentle moon landing and the subsequent moonwalk by the crew of the Apollo 11 spacecraft in July 16, 1969. This history can show us that when we have complex issues to deal in our work, study, or life, instead of tackling it, we can try to find one small element, a sub-problem, and solve that part first. Understanding a sub-issue and its solution can lead us to solving a bigger problem. If you can solve a problem, then there is an easier problem you can solve. Find it. For example, doing a single pull-up can be very hard for those people that are not trained, but they can perform a series of progressions that help to understand how the movement works, build muscles, and create stability. When you have to perform something tough, creative problem solvers create an easier, simpler problem that they can solve. They resolve that easier issue thoroughly and then study that simple scenario with laser focus. Those insights often point the way to resolution of the original difficult problem. First, just try to hit the moon. Walking on its surface is for another day. The last point we will cover of understand deeply is to look for what is missing. Forcing ourselves to see what actually is in front of us, harder than we believe we should see, is a difficult task. But according to the book, an even greater challenge is trying to see what is missing. We can make a habit to always ask what is not in the picture but could be relevant. One example to illustrate this skill is the mathematician Abraham Wald. During the World War II, he was asked to help the Royal Air Force to find the areas on their planes that were most often hit by the bullets so they could cover them with more armor. But instead of counting the bullet holes on the returning planes, he recommended armoring the spots where none of the planes had taken any hits, which showed that the Royal Air Force forgot to take into account what was not there to see: all the planes that didn't make it back. They didn't return because they probably were hit where they should have had extra protection, like the fuel tank, for example. The returning planes could only show what was less relevant. Another great example is Sylvan Goodman, a small grocery store owner in 1937. He wanted to better understand his shoppers. In describing the buying ability of a customer, he might have wondered, a person can buy only what he or she can carry. Armed with this insight and his desire to enable his customer to buy more, Goodman took some wood folding chairs and affixed wheels to their legs and a basket to their seats. In this way, Sylvan Goodman invented the shopping cart. Not only did the cash start rolling in, but this innovation also led the way for department, retail, electronic, and home improvement stores of the future to move lots and lots of merchandise. Describing what was in front of him, he was led to see what was missing. And if you notice, the concept of a shopping cart representing the act of buying is still used today even for online purchases. In our daily and intellectual experiences, there are gaps of many sorts. We can try to search for, understand them, and fill those gaps. Seeing what is missing helps us to review new possibilities, create new solutions to complex problems, and identify the limits of our knowledge. So this is the purpose of understand deeply, to master fundamental principles, ideas, methods that then create a solid foundation on which we can build. Seeing what's actually there without prejudice let us develop a less biased understanding of our world. As the authors say, in fact, we associate understanding with the element earth because when we attain a rich understanding, we are literally standing upon rock-solid, firm ground. The next element is fire, but we'll be doing a little bit different this time. We will cover this element in a different video. For now, I will leave you with this video that may interest you.